Guys, let's get more news about Warriors. But first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. The Golden State Warriors know they need to add a center this offseason. Steve Kerr said it, and Draymond Green did too. They have been linked to Nikola Vucevic, but held off on a trade for him before the deadline. Another big that the Warriors know well also drew pre-deadline interest from several teams, and he'll be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Golden State signed Chris Boucher after he went undrafted in 2017. He appeared in one game for the Warriors in their 2017-18 season. Boucher became a free agent that offseason, signing with the Raptors, playing 28 games in Toronto's championship season. Boucher established himself with the Raptors, which was fitting given that he moved to Canada as a young child. He went from fighting to prove himself to becoming a key part of the organization and is the only remaining player on the roster from the 2019 title squad. The 32-year-old played some of the best basketball of his career this past season, averaging 10 points and 4.5 rebounds per game, shooting 49.2% from the field and 36.3% from three-point range. Toronto opted not to trade Boucher before the deadline. There was speculation that the Raptors would buy out his contract, but that didn't happen. He'll hit free agency in a few weeks and could leave Toronto after 7 seasons. The Raptors underwent a mini rebuild period the past couple of years, but shocked everyone by trading for Brandon Ingram before the deadline. While Toronto could return to the playoffs in 2026 for the first time in 4 years, several contending teams could use a player like Boucher. It would be a full circle moment for Boucher to return to the Bay and help Golden State win another championship. He isn't the starter the Warriors need, but he's a productive player off the bench. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
Kuminga story. As Bobby Marks of ESPN, who is their really resident capologist and kind of lays out the offseason outlooks for each NBA team, said that Golden State's offseason, quote, all depends on Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this isn't necessarily the newest news or something that we are all surprised by. We know Jonathan Kuminga is going to be the biggest domino to fall as a restricted free agent with the Warriors a little bit over the cap, but not yet a luxury paying team. Bobby Marks, the full quote, he said this: "It all depends on Kuminga. He basically controls free agency in Golden State. If they sign him to a contract and bring him back, then that's really as far as what they can do in the offseason to improve the roster. They might have one of their smaller exceptions and everything here, but then you look at the rest of the roster and it's like, okay, is it Buddy Hield? Is it Brandon Pajemski? Is it some of those other players? Guys that are not making that much money." And again, like, we knew that Kuminga was going to be the biggest domino to fall this offseason. And there have been a couple of reports coming out over the past few days that, likelihood is increasing that Kuminga could be brought back on a deal long term. And we know how much Joe Lacob loves Jonathan Kuminga. But my assumption here is that I think the Warriors need to get better this offseason. And I don't think you can get much better by keeping Jonathan Kuminga and signing him to a long-term deal. Because what did Bobby Marks say? There aren't a ton of players on this roster that make a whole heck of a lot of money. And Jonathan Kuminga could be making a whole heck of a lot of money this offseason if he gets a new deal elsewhere. As far as who Golden State could trade aside from him, like, you got Kuminga, who's a restricted free agent, so you already are kind of capped at the return you can get back, unless you attach one of these other names in the deal. But remember, Jonathan Kuminga, whatever his contract offer sheet that he signs with a new team in a sign-and trade, Golden State can only take back half of what he's making on that new deal. So it complicates things a good bit. Third teams might have to be involved, and it could get hairy, and, Jonathan Kuminga could end up just coming back to Golden State. You never know. But Moses Moody makes $11.5 million, around a mid-level exception kind of contract. He's starting his extension of 3 years. Also, Buddy Hield, $9.2 million. Like, that used to be like a really nice movable asset. Not really anymore. It doesn't do too much as far as getting a trade across the finish line. But if that is the thing that needs to happen for Golden State to get a good deal, then I'm sure that they will have no problem really trading Buddy Hield's $9.2 million. And then Brandon Pajemski is your next highest salary player at $3.7 million. So there aren't a lot of avenues for Golden State to make big trades if it does not include Jonathan Kuminga. And as far as free agency goes, like, they don't have a ton of avenues there either. Because not only do they have the non-taxpayer mid-level exception at this point, if they go out and sign Jonathan Kuminga, do they still have that? Maybe they get a deal done before Kuminga agrees to a deal, but at this point, they have the non-taxpayer mid-level at $14 million. They have the biannual exception at $5.1 million. You have 2 trade exceptions at $8.8 and about $2.5 million. Then you have a second-round draft pick and the veteran minimum exception that you can use. So there isn't a ton of room to kind of maneuver and make this roster a whole heck of a lot better than it was in the playoffs that we just saw. but and then translated to 25-26. And Anthony Slater kind of burst my bubble a little bit, to be quite honest with you, because I thought this would be a pretty eventful offseason for Golden State, and I still think it will be. But Slater said this on the most recent episode of the Warriors Plus Minus podcast. He said, it's not entirely impossible to see this roster come back relatively as is. And that's unfortunate, man, because I just don't think the roster relatively as is can win a championship. And I'm not so sure that a marginal addition, somebody that could take up that mid-level exception contract, gets them over the hump to beat an Oklahoma City Thunder. So I think this would be pretty big malpractice from Golden State if the roster comes back pretty much the same. So with now we look back at Kuminga here, and with the Nets not expected to send an offer sheet out to Jonathan Kuminga at this point, with them being the only team that has more than $24 million in cap space. And keep in mind, there's only 2 teams that have more than like $15 million in cap space. So there aren't a lot of teams that can go out there and just sign Jonathan Kuminga outright. The Nets are really the only team pretty much that has the ability to do so. And with them not going out there and expecting to sign an offer sheet for Kuminga, like now we start thinking about some trades and ways that Golden State can improve this roster while losing Kuminga in free agency this offseason. And there are officially 3 options as to what Kuminga could do, but really there's only 2. Golden State could sign Kuminga to that long-term deal, and what the valuation on that deal is at this point, I have no clue. Could it be $15 million? Could it be $20 million? Could it be $25 million? It's all up in the air at this point. Maybe we see what his market looks like, externally, and maybe we work out a sign and trade. You never know, because there aren't a ton of teams that can go out there and just sign Kuminga to an offer sheet, and that's unfortunate. But you could facilitate a sign and trade elsewhere. I think that is looking a little bit likelier at this point. And then you have Kuminga. He could sign the $7.9 million qualifying offer that makes him an unrestricted free agent in 2026. But that is very, very unlikely. So these are the 2 only options here. Either he's coming back, or we're finding some assets for him and sending him away in a sign and trade. But as far as what you could potentially get back in a sign and trade for Jonathan Kuminga, Tim Kawakami, Warriors insider, who I see as a realist and somebody with common sense on the internet, he doesn't seem to be, at least, too excited about a Kuminga sign and trade and what it will return back. He was doing a mailbag with the San Francisco Chronicle, and he was talking about some things he could get back. Somebody asked him, could the Warriors find their an Alex Caruso in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade, where the Thunder sent away Josh Giddey, a player who we all thought would be something, and then he kind of fizzled out, and now he's back being good again with the Bulls. But at the time, everybody thought that was just a complete steal. Like the Thunder fleeced the Bulls in that scenario, and now you see them in the NBA Finals, and Alex Caruso is a huge piece. Could Golden State find something like that this offseason? Potentially. Kawakami thinks that there are a couple different ways that this could go. The top end is Trey Murphy. Now, I don't think that's incredibly likely. I think New Orleans is more likely to build around him than trade him away, and he's probably on a pretty decent deal at this point too. But I would love a Trey Murphy. He's about as close to an all-star as you can get, and if Golden State could find a way to swindle New Orleans, who's thinking about blowing it up, into taking Jonathan Kuminga for Trey Murphy, I would be all for that. I would be calling him up right now, making it happen. On the middle rung, he would have Bruce Brown, and then the player that he said would be most likely for Golden State to get a return back for would be DeAnthony Melton. And he said if they're trading Kuminga, I think the Warriors would ideally want more than Melton's current value in return, especially now that he's coming off a torn ACL. But if you're speculating Melton's pre-ACL production and fit, where he was the starting shooting guard and won that spot early in the season, I think it's just about a realistic value for a Kuminga trade in July. I don't think it would actually be Melton, but who knows? And the player that the Warriors traded for, or just going to be signed last offseason for the mid-level exception in DeAnthony Melton, like, that was a good player. That was a guy who can go out there and average 12 points a game, a couple assists, be able to handle the ball, initiate Golden State's offense, and let Steph work off of the ball while playing really pesky defense on the other end and creating transition opportunities as well. But we know he tore his ACL 12 games into the season, and it was unfortunate, and we had to send him away in the Schroeder deal. He could be coming back to Golden State on a shorter-term deal this offseason, but who knows? I don't think Jonathan Kuminga will be traded, and it'll be some sort of double sign and trade between the Nets and the Warriors. Now, I say all this to say, like, Tim Kawakami also mentioned that he has no clue what Jonathan Kuminga would return back in a trade. We haven't heard any rumblings of any potential frameworks at this point. It's all speculation. I've thrown out names like Kobe White of the Bulls, but I've also thrown out Nikola Vucevic and like Alonzo Ball package on the Bulls as well. Cam Johnson's a pipe dream. Like, there are names out there, but who really knows what Kuminga is going to go for at this point? Where will Jonathan Kuminga play next season? I want to hear from you guys. Will it be in Golden State? Will it be somewhere else in the NBA? You comment that down below for me right here, right now. I'm trying to hear from Dub Nation. Next, we're going to get into the Warriors' first pre-draft workouts of the offseason, as they had brought in 3 names, and a couple of them who were going pretty deep into March Madness. You might know them. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first, I got to give a huge shout-out to our sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform because it's daily fantasy made easy. Here's how it works. All you guys got to do is pick a lineup of 2 to 6 players and just pick more or less on their projected stats. Whether it's basketball, baseball, hockey, you got the finals in both of those leagues going in full force at this point. And you can win up to 2,000 times your money on Prize Picks. They always want to make it easier for you guys to win real money in real time watching your favorite sports because they offer awesome deals like Taco Tuesday, which is active today. They'll discount a player stat projection up to 25% off and make it easy for you guys to cash that square. Also, Flex Friday, where if you lose your lineup, they give it back to you in promo funds up to $20. My lineup for Game 1 of the Finals is as follows. I got SGA more than 33.5 points. I got Isaiah Hartenstein more than 7 rebounds. And Tyrese Halliburton more than 9 assists. You can tail my picks or fade them. Just do it at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code CLNS for $50 instantly when you place your first $5 entry. You don't need to win to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All that information will be clickable down in the comment section and description of today's video. All right, the Warriors, they do hold the 41st pick in the 2025 NBA draft. So not the most premium draft selection, and they're not really appearing in a ton of mock drafts at this point because not a lot of them have gone 2 rounds. But the Warriors are holding a pre-draft workout today for 3 separate prospects. The first one we'll talk about on the show is Ryan Nembhard. Now, it's unfortunate because Golden State is now bringing in another player who is closer to being under 6 foot than he is to 6'5". But the basketball IQ of Ryan Nembhard cannot be understated. I've watched this guy for years, dating all the way back to his days back at Creighton. He's an excellent player in the pick and roll as the ball handler. He doesn't turn the ball over, especially in the open court. Like, he's really smart with the basketball. He makes the right reads. He led the nation in assists last season, and he's a capable scorer as well. He can shoot the 3 ball at a 40% clip. It's not going to be at a crazy high volume, but I like Ryan Nembhard a lot as an option for Golden State. When you consider his ability to kind of just be a floor general. Like, he's not going to wow you with his size. Like, he is at barefoot when he measured the combine was 5'11". So again, not going to be great, but the experience, he's 22 years old. The defense and the floor and the facilitation are, really the qualities that NBA teams are going to be looking for with Ryan Nembhard. Next up is going to be Sion James from Duke, the Duke Blue Devil who transferred from Tulane this past season and was a mainstay in their starting lineup and really was a big guard there at 6'6", like Duke's starting 5. I don't think there was a player below 6'6" in the lineup, so it was actually insane. But Sion James ran a lot of the ball handling duties out there for Duke when Tyrese Proctor would run off of the ball and whatnot. Like, Sion James would bring the ball up, he'd initiate, but his calling card specifically is his defense. Yes, he can hit the 3 ball at a 40% clip. Again, not on a huge volume for James this past season, and he can work in transition, but like, his calling card is his on-ball defense. He's an elite wingspan. He's big-bodied. He's jacked, no doubt about it. And he was able to take on some of the toughest assignments in college basketball.
Shout out to my patrons, because this was brought up to me in a live stream with them that I just really hadn't considered. But the number 2 player on my list, really, and maybe all of these acquisitions, never mind big men, Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, he is going to be a free agent next summer, 2026 summer, but because he missed out on All-NBA, he missed out on that Supermax extension this year. Memphis clearly wants to, give him an extension now and probably build more around him than Ja, if we're being honest, right? But because he didn't make that All-NBA team, it would behoove him, you would imagine, to play this season out so he would be eligible for that Supermax. The bottom line is there's not a real incentive for Jaren Jackson Jr. to sign this extension. And if Memphis gets froggy, they're not exactly stable in their situation right now with Ja and his availability. They surprise fire Jenkins and, they had an ugly end to the season. And so, listen, if Jaren Jackson Jr. is made available, you want to talk about, just what the doctor ordered. 6'11", shoots the three, former defensive player of the year. Now, they all have their warts, right? He does get in foul trouble, but, if Jaren Jackson Jr. somehow was available this summer, you offer everyone not named Steph or Jimmy to try to make that happen. All the draft capital and however you would the bidding would be, I think, right around, it'd be higher than Durant, and probably it'd be in between Giannis and Durant as far as the bids out there for someone like Jaren Jackson Jr. But, again, it was made to my awareness that, like, hey, what it was compared to me was the De'Aaron Fox situation in Sacramento, where it was like, and that's how that played out. And you saw what Fox went for. I think Jaren Jackson would, in my opinion, go for more than De'Aaron Fox because just he's a more unique star player to acquire. There are a lot of really good guards in this league. There aren't too many, all-star young big men who play a modern style. So Jaren Jackson Jr., those are the tier one lists, pipe dreams, whatever you want to call them. Those are the only two I have in there as far as the big men, the true big men go. Moving on to tier two, another name we've talked about for a while, Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen, did he play last year in Utah? Did he play? It kind of feels like Danny Ainge overplayed his hand with Lauri Markkanen, giving him that extension and holding him kind of, I won't say hostage. It sounds like Lauri and his family like Utah. It's a fit for him. But look, I could make the argument that at 22, 23 years old, Kuminga is a much better fit for Utah. The what if, and, that he could be better than Lauri in a few years. I very much think that. And I think more importantly, if you're looking at an organization who doesn't have a superstar, a true lead guy, Kuminga's mental makeup and mentality is much more that than Lauri Markkanen's. But, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But I think Lauri, who, look, it would have been exciting to get him last summer, right? And then people were really upset about, Podziemski's untouchable and all these things. But it played out this season, and I understand Utah was tanking, kind of got punished for it, seemed like it, right, from Adam Silver. But, Lauri is he's not him. He's not him. He's not, like, he's a good player, and he would fit really well with the Warriors, but he's not a guy you sell the kitchen sink for. And I think now, with maybe his value going down a little bit in Utah, kind of looking around, we didn't land Cooper Flag in their timetable. Maybe it makes a little more sense. The cost is a little lower. And I think for Golden State, it makes more sense with Jimmy now. It makes much more sense with Jimmy because Lauri wouldn't be asked to be the true number 2 on this roster. Last summer, it was like, all right, Steph and Lauri. Obviously there's Draymond, but we're talking about like scoring options and go-to guys. I was a little uneasy about that thought. But now if Jimmy in the picture and he's kind of like the 2B third guy and the way he would fit with Jimmy playing out on the perimeter, it makes a ton of sense. At what cost? I don't know. Ainge doesn't seem very reasonable, but I think that it's a name that's back out there on the market. Next, in tier 2 of this big man list, Domantas Sabonis of the Sacramento Kings. Fox gets shipped to San Antonio. They had a really it feels like it's falling apart in Sacramento here. What, Keegan Murray, where are you? Malik Monk, durability. Kings will be kings, right? The Kings will be the Kings, man. Now I have some empathy for Kings fans, but not too much, considering y'all pop so much shit during our playoff battles and all that. Y'all are the Kings. What you gonna do? So y'all gonna mess it up. No. So Sabonis, after the Fox trade, he gave out the comments that he needs to, what was the exact wording of it? He needs clarity. He needs to seek clarity from the front office on the direction moving forward, right? And in NBA talk, that's kind of code for like, I might ask out. I don't like how this is going, right? And so we'll see, right? And if he does ask out here this summer, or he does be made available, they gave him $43 million per. He is on a super deal, so I don't know what the market quite will be for him when he is a center. While the regular season numbers are gaudy, a lot of people are probably under the belief that like ultimately he's going to get played off the floor at some point in the playoffs. And, kind of like Towns, I guess played off the floor is strong because he's going to play with that type of contract in the role that he has on a team. But Towns gives you much more offense, like to justify the defensive liabilities. I think Towns is worse than Sabonis defensively, honestly. But he does have some limitations. And so, look, it's probably a stretch to imagine the Warriors and Kings making a trade. When was the last, was it the Mitch Richmond trade? Well, I mean, it's been a while, right? And Vivek, and, I think, listen, the Kings front office isn't exactly an intellectual haven. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, they do weird things. And I think if Vivek thought he was getting the better of the deal and getting over on the Warriors, would you do a Kuminga sign and trade with Moses Moody for Sabonis? And, I get it. He doesn't really stretch the floor, but because of his passing, he can play outside of the paint offensively. Like, he is probably the best dribble handoff center in that type of game in the league outside of Jokic, which Jokic doesn't count, right? He's just like his own thing. But like, he would fit the system crazy. He's an elite rebounder, high motor. You could hide him in zone. I would be intrigued. As crazy as this sounds, I'd be intrigued to see Sabonis in our offense. And then you say, well, what about Draymond? What about Draymond? I mean, yeah, we've seen this before though. Like, I don't know how deep the beef is. I mean, he did kind of try to cave his chest in, but hey, Chris Paul showed up 2 years ago and it was all roses. So I don't know if they could work past that. But Sabonis is a name that potentially could be out there. He'd be a great system fit, costs a lot. What do y'all think about Sabonis? I'm curious. I think this will be a 50-50 between Dub Nation. Next up, Tier 2 big men, Naz Reid. Naz Reid. Listen, I'm not sure I even wanted to put him in Tier 2. I know that Dub Nation is in love with Naz Reid, and on paper, he's this perfect stretch big man. Did you watch him in these playoffs? I did. Obviously, I did the Warriors-Wolves series, right? I think I did. It was OKC, Minnesota. I had a breakdown of that. And it's funny because I think Warrior fans, Dub Nation, we've watched him through the lens of him just giving it to us. He plays so well against the Warriors. That's like our view of him. But if you watch him more objectively in other matchups, he doesn't do any of the little things. He doesn't box out. His closeouts are atrocious. And, I just don't think he's quite who we think he is. And again, I get it. Shoots the three, some weak side rim protection, but Big Jelly, listen, at the contract he's on right now, cool. There's limitations. He's not going to rebound as much as you want. His rotations aren't that sharp, but he's about to get paid. He's about to get paid. And so I've cooled significantly on Naz Reid. Again, I know a lot of y'all are like, oh no, he'd be the perfect fit. You have to, the value of it. And again, go watch some other Wolves video, some other Wolves tape games of him. And I think you'll see him more objectively that he is not, I think he's a sixth man, right? As he was the reigning sixth man of the year. I just don't think he's like the answer of like a starting guy you fill in there. And he's not quite big enough to be a center either. So look, I don't want to shit on Naz. Like, I wouldn't be mad at the acquisition, but I'm not as excited at it as I previously was. All right, moving on to Tier 3 here. Brook Lopez, Splash Mountain. 37 years old. He is a free agent who is going to be courted by a lot of teams. Look, I think most of us understand.
It's the kind of rumor that gets NBA Twitter spinning. Giannis Antetokounmpo joining the Golden State Warriors to chase more rings alongside Stephen Curry. But if you ask Bobby Marks, it's going to cost more than fans think. The Milwaukee Bucks star reportedly sat down with the front office to discuss his future, prompting speculation about a possible blockbuster exit. And with the Warriors eyeing a win-now window before Curry rides into the sunset, the math seemed worth running. But on ESPN's Get Up, Marks broke down the brutal financial reality of the scenario. with Antetokounmpo owed $51.9 million next season and Curry locked in for $59.6 million. There's simply no room for another max contract without shedding serious salary. Brandon Podziemski wasn't directly commenting on a potential Giannis to Warriors move, but the Warriors god, who grew up in Wisconsin, knows firsthand what Giannis means to that state. In a recent appearance on the Up and Adams show, Podziemski reflected on what it was like to compete against a player he grew up idolizing. He added that seeing a player like Giannis in a different jersey would feel just as strange as Curry leaving Golden State. There's no doubt Giannis would change everything for Golden State. He'd give the franchise one last seismic shift and a genuine shot at another title, but it wouldn't come cheap, it wouldn't come easy, and it wouldn't come without sacrifice. For now, the Warriors might still be dreaming of pairing Curry with another MVP, but unless Antetokounmpo forces his way out, it'll stay a dream for now. And you, fan, what do you think about Giannis Antetokounmpo situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.